So what we can take you through is a really quick overview of Yellowfin, giving you some of the key points, some of the key differentiators, and really giving you a good overall view of some of the key functionalities as well. So as you saw in Gene's presentation, in terms of the architecture, quickly, we are very it is a very flexible and easily scalable application. So you can be deployed on premise. Can be deployed on cloud-based environments, so it's completely flexible and up to you where you wanted to install and host your environment. It is platform independent as well, so it could be a Windows server, a Linux box, it could be a Mac, it could be anything. It's really up to you how you wanted to install and host your particular instance. But probably the key with Yellowfin is that wherever you are hosting it, all the access is web-based. So in that way, you can allow access to this environment to virtually anyone, and that's obviously depending on the security you bring in there. So you could have users who all they need is an actual a web browser. They could open their Chrome, Firefox, their Internet Explorer, and they could log into the actual application that way and start interacting with all the different layers of Yellowfin. So maybe if they're more of a administrator, they might be looking through the administration, setting up their governance, their data sources, their users, adding security or managing user preferences. Or maybe if there was something like more of a report consumer, they might be viewing some of the dashboards they've been allocated, interacting with the reports. Or even if they were more of a maybe report creator, they could easily go through and start maybe viewing current reports, or even going through and creating their own content on the fly using the drag and drop interface. So it's all very easy to access, very intuitive to use, very easy to understand and really get into quickly. And that's using just the web-based interface as I mentioned. But it's worth noting that you're not just restricted to a web interface. There are actually native mobile applications for iPad, iPhone, and Android that mean you can actually view all this same content. So maybe any of these reports or these entire dashboards, they can be viewed on those mobile devices. And that's nothing extra. That's all part of Yellowfin. And you can actually download those for free, point them at your Yellowfin instance, and instantly you'll be able to start viewing the same reports, the same dashboards, interacting in the same way, even collaborating in the same way, just via the mobile devices. So in that way, it does give you a lot of flexibility around how you wanted to actually consume your data and interact with it once your content has been created. So that does give you a bit of an overview of the architecture for Yellowfin and how everything fits together more from the back end. So what I might do now is just maybe focus on those three different users I mentioned and just take you quickly through how Yellowfin will appear and how you could interact from their perspective. So probably first one might be more of a report consumer, as I mentioned. So there is a lot of functionality to allow for interactivity, for slicing and dicing. So whether it's something like within a report, being able to drill down through different layers, being able to drill through from reports, maybe to more detailed reports. So going from summary levels to more transactional data. So allowing that kind of transition. Even something like Drill Anywhere, being able to drill down on parts of your reports, but also change your analysis as you go. So maybe I want to see Europe, but I want to see Europe by year, and we can quickly update that. So we've changed our analysis, we're drilling down, and we're focusing on particular data sets. So you've got that kind of interactive functionality to really get into the charts and really drill down, drill through on the data sets. Or as I mentioned before, even something like slicing and dicing the data, very easy process, quite simple to set up as well. So for individual reports or dashboards, you can add filters that could be metrics, they could be key dimensions, there could be parameters you're feeding values into, and you can easily go and start applying those to individual reports, entire dashboards, and start really using that analytical functionality to slice and dice the data. Even if you are looking at directly interacting with your reports, you could use the brushing functionality to actually click and drag on a particular report and focus on particular sections. Or even if you're looking at linking reports together, you can make those kind of actions apply to an entire dashboard as well. So you've got a range of interactive functionality there to really give you the ability to interact in a lot of different ways with the reports that you're currently reviewing. Even if you're looking at managing things like multiple metrics, that can easily be done. Even comparing metrics at a time. Here we've got a range of different metrics that I can actually flick between within a single report. So I could have my key metrics here that I could one by one I can analyze those. Maybe over time, I could change my time periods using the time slider. And you'll probably even see that if I'm looking at something like my key cost metric, I see that represented over time, but I can also see that represented in other reports. So again, it's linked together, so you're seeing a nice consistent picture of the data. But even if you wanted to look at more maybe higher level reporting, maybe more KPI style reports where there isn't as much analysis going on, Yellowfin will allow you to easily create those reports and maintain them as well. This particular dashboard here is a really simple KPI dashboard. We focused on maybe 3 key metrics that we can track via their trends, via their targets, and the underlying variances. And we can even go and click through to see them in more detail. So you have again that interactivity. And even in this case, we've gone and complemented our little KPI section in the middle with some other reports to add some context. And even in our report at the top here, we've utilized the summary functionality to bring in some higher level breakdowns, some related metrics, some trending as well. So again, really bringing in some extra information to help make this a more rounded analysis. And if I jump across to our last dashboard here, another part of Yellowfin where we do differentiate ourselves is our geographical or GIS reports. So actually being able to plot geographical data and visualize it within Yellowfin is again quite an easy process. So that could be using something like a geographical point. So maybe these are all my sales or my clients, all my assets or locations. So I can plot those based on a latitude and longitude point, allowing me to interact with my reports, hover over each of those to see the individual values. We can interact with the chart. We have a nice background coming through giving us extra information, but that could be something like the built-in background layer you see here at the moment, but it could also be things like maybe a background layer that's sourcing from Google Maps or maybe a mapping server layer. So you've got a lot of flexibility to actually say what is the background layer and what is it bringing through to add some context to my report. Even in something like Google Maps, it's quite a useful one because it's a very easy way to a very comfortable and familiar way to actually interact with the reports for most users. And even we could go and start doing things like drilling through, drilling down, all within our geographical reports. Probably even if we look at the top report here, you'll have that ability to again cycle through different metrics, so we can get again see some different metrics visualized through one particular report. Or even we could go and start doing things like bringing in different data sets and comparing them. So here I could bring in another data set as an extra layer, and I could overlay those to start looking for comparisons, for contrasts, and for relationships between maybe the overall values that we see here and maybe the individual locations I've plotted over the top. So you've got, again, a lot of interactive functionality there to give you a lot more scope for the different ways you can analyze the data and interact with it. So that's probably looking more of a report consumer perspective. Another key part of Yellowfin and another differentiator is the ease of use more from a report creator perspective. So if we were looking at creating reports, we've really focused this process on making it easy, making it very simple, very intuitive for the report creator. So that in essence, pretty much anyone can go and create reports without needing things like knowledge of SQL, knowledge of programming languages. We've set it up, as you see here, in just a very simple drag and drop interface. So what I can do is start just finding the fields and metrics on the left-hand side and just start dragging them across. So maybe I wanted a few metrics, maybe I wanted maybe a time period. I can just drag them across onto the canvas and instantly it starts visualizing. I can easily move my items around. I can change the structure of my report just by dragging my fields and metrics between the columns and rows. And I can easily edit, format, and set these up exactly as I want them to be. Even if you wanted some flexibility in the report. If you wanted to add filters, all you need to do is just drag them across. So they, again, could be metrics or dimensions. And straight away, I've dragged them across and I can now see them as a filter option that I can apply to my report. So it's making it very easy and simple to actually set all these different functionalities up and create a very useful report. But this is just the first step. So if I've dropped in all my fields and metrics, I've set up the underlying structure of my table data. I could easily go into my next step, start putting in together some charts or visualizations. So again, it's just drag and drop. So any of the items I've dropped in here, I could start just dragging them across. And this will start again visualizing or creating charts based on the items I'm dropping in. So again, it's looking at a bit of a data discovery model. So if I dropped these into both in the vertical axis, it might compare the numbers. If I dropped in my year value, it might start doing a stat component. Even if I dropped it up here, it might look at more of a trellis chart kind of thing. So, so what we can do here is we've got our auto chart. So this is really just allowing you to see what kind of visualizations you can do. But you can always just go and pop out the charts from the right and choose from a list of a whole range of different visualizations and just choose the one you wanted to go with. So I might have chosen here a particular vertical column. That looks good. So I could go and format this again with colors, styles, fonts, and labels, even axes. As I wanted, but that looks good for now. So what I could also do is you can have multiple visualizations within your reports. So maybe if you wanted a different perspective, I've gone and added in another chart that I want to see, maybe just a simple heat grid. So if I put my 2 dimensions in and maybe 1 or 2 metrics, I can start visualizing my data based on this heat grid, looking at the size of the bubbles and the colors to define those 2 key metrics. So I've done that now. I've put together 2 very simple quick charts. So if I jump across to my output, I can bring everything together. So what I'll see at the bottom is my table of data I created first. I'll also see a canvas here that I can easily just drop my items across onto. And that can include things like say looking at text to explain what's going on, maybe images, little labels, icons, or even things like shapes as well. So you can add a bit more of a multimedia element to that, and that lets you create those kind of reports that might be more of the infographic style reports with some maybe branding in there, with some explanations, and a little bit more some images and text to really make it more user friendly. So here you can really just set out exactly how you want your report to look, how those charts are arranged, where your table is showing up. Even things like the filters, we can quickly and easily using our formatting, go and set them up to appear in a certain place, maybe on our left, or even just make the filters more user friendly. So maybe I could make a slider there. So what I've done now, I've created a nice simple report just with those 3 easy steps using drag and drop. And I can see my filters are set up as well. So what I can do now is actually save and activate my report. And that then allows me then to go start sharing that report with other users, to maybe have users come in and start viewing the report, analyzing the data. So we could come in and say, maybe we want to start filtering by these 2 values. Maybe we can focus in on a particular year. So you've got all that analysis functionality that you can now start working with. But as with other tools, one thing we see differently with Yellowfin is that this is not the endpoint. You've created your content, but now you want to be able to get a lot of value out of sharing and collaborating on that. So if we went up to our menu at the top, there's a whole range of collaboration options. So it could be something like exporting out to various data types. You could shoot off a quick email or shoot off this report as a distribution to maybe users or groups. So they'll be alerted and they'd be able to now view this report and drop in and see that. You can even automate this entire process. So if you wanted to maybe broadcast reports out to a number of users, we could say send it to this group, send this report every day, use the current filters, or even we could go and add in business rules. So maybe if I had a particular metric I wanted to keep track of, I can actually look for particular values in that metric and have this report then run and alert users or groups whenever those values are occurring. So you have that ability then to completely schedule and automate these processes to have that data come out to you. Or even if you weren't looking at distributing the report, what you can do still within this report is actually go and start commenting and collaborating and creating conversations. So on the right hand side, you'll actually see that you'll have a little comments bar. So this will let users come in and start sending comments to other users, to the public within the environment, and you can start creating ideas, thoughts, and opinions that way. So maybe we've gone and viewed our report. We see quarter four is a bit of an anomaly, so I could say quarter four needs investigation. And I might just have to type that correctly. There we are. So you could start bringing in some comments, sending this to a particular user, and you could start a conversation that way to really start reviewing what is important with this particular report or with this particular set of data. And we knew that if another user might come in, they could then be alerted to that. They can see the comments. They can then click on the bookmark and again see the context or what the actual user saw and start responding and creating that conversation and that feedback loop. So you've got a lot of scope there for really bringing a lot of different users in, getting them involved and collaborating in that way. And this is just at the report level. So if we actually left our report here and went back to our discussion forum, this is actually where all those comments, those distributions, those schedules come together. So what you'll see by default here is what we call a timeline, which actually shows me exactly everything that's been happening in my environment. So I've created all these reports. I can see that people have commented. I've maybe entered a discussion, and I can see exactly everything that's happening. I can even post updates for content that I might have created. So maybe I could say, this is my new report, drop it in, and I can post this out to other people to start reviewing. So it's almost like a bit of a social media stream within your business intelligence environment where people can collaborate, where they can talk, where they can generate ideas. So you have a lot of functionality there and flexibility there to really get a lot of users involved. Or even if you're looking at creating formal discussions, you can also do that. So we could have a number of topics here. We could go and create discussions, and similar to the post I just put in there, I could base my discussions around pieces of content. So maybe a report, a dashboard, a storyboard. We could restrict this to a particular group or set of users. We could easily go and make this a forum or a discussion that needs a decision by a particular date. And even in the example one we have here, we've linked this to our key sales forecast data. We've brought people in. We've said, okay, propose some resolutions. We've had some resolutions come through. We've actually voted on one, and then from that we've taken our content and actually created a decision or an action plan. So really keeping that process within the BI tool completely centralized and making that process a whole lot easier to facilitate. So that's really looking at the discussion forums and how that complements some of the other collaborative functionalities that you would see in Yellowfin. And that really is a key differentiator for Yellowfin, is that ability to, on top of the content, start really collaborating and generate value via that. So probably one thing I might jump across and show you lastly is I've shown you a little bit of the report consumer and the report creator. So if we jump across to more of the report, the administrator side of things, this is where, as Jean mentioned, we do have the benefits of a full governance model, enterprise level governance for your business intelligence application. So you have a lot of scope here to really configure, to administer, to lock down your environment. So that could be something like easily creating new data sources, creating views of your data. So being able to set aside particular sets of data that are available to particular users. But as I mentioned, you can easily govern the environment. So using the users you're adding in, using roles and using your groups, you can completely lock down your environment security-wise. So with something like the roles, you can define exactly what a user has access to do. So maybe the kinds of functionality they have. So if we look at this as a good example, I'm looking at my administrator role, and they could have the ability to create public reports, or they could have the ability to export or edit views. So you can just use a very simple tick or untick to be able to define exactly what a particular user with a role can do. And these roles are completely up to you. So you can customize those, you can copy those, you can create your own, and really very closely mirror exactly what you want to see in terms of access for users. But as well as the roles within Yellowfin, you'll have your groups as well. So the users in the groups will actually allow you to apply security at almost every level of Yellowfin. So security at the data sources, the views, the reports, the dashboards, the storyboards, and even the what we call the content categories, so the folders that your reports are stored in. So you can easily define which users have access to maybe view those sets of content, to edit them, to delete them, and you can completely govern that within Yellowfin, within this administration section. So even looking at governing a small environment with maybe 5 users, you could do that exactly the same way as you would with a large environment with 1,000 users. You can easily go and manage that, and even that becomes even easier when you're looking at things like integrating with authentication methods, so maybe integrating with an LDAP or an Active Directory source. If you're looking at maybe outsourcing that authentication from Yellowfin into your LDAP or Active Directory, and really automating the process there and making it a whole lot smoother transition. So that was looking more at the governance, and that's where Yellowfin sticks out. It's done in one place, it's nicely centralized, and it's very easy to set up and interact with. And probably the last little thing I'll mention here is I've mentioned a lot of configurability in Yellowfin. Well, that flows across to things like the integration as well. So the Yellowfin application can be a standalone like you see here, but you can also easily integrate it in a number of ways with other applications. So whether that's something like embedding a report or a dashboard within a wiki page or blog, all the way through to embedding Yellowfin within a window of your application, or even having your application call particular parts of Yellowfin or particular content to actually render within your application in that way. So you've got a lot of flexibility from how your application interacts with Yellowfin or how Yellowfin is set up, and that even flows across to things like your look and feel, where in essence Yellowfin has the ability to be completely white labeled. So you could go and change things like the fonts, the labels, the colors, the headers, the footers, the login pages, and you can completely rebrand the environment so it looks exactly like your own. There might not even be any particular view of Yellowfin or any Yellowfin branding left. It's completely up to you. So similar to the administration, to the integration, the white labeling and customization is completely up to you and completely open for you to set that up. So that's probably, if you're looking at a nice overview of Yellowfin, that probably gives you a good run across all the different key functionalities, all the different key differentiators as well that you would see within Yellowfin.